Hey, I'm Kai, and today I'm going to be checking out the Reload 2 by Tunos. The Reload 2 is many things. It's a stereo power amp, it's a Loadbox, and by extension of those two things, it also works as an attenuator. I'm going to try it out in a bunch of different contexts today, and hopefully give you an idea of the sorts of things that it's capable of, and maybe give you some ideas of how you might use this one. If you'd like to just skip right ahead onto the playing clips, I'll leave timestamps in the description box down below, as well as chapter markers. Let's go over some of the specs and the features of the Reload 2 first though. It has two dedicated power amps that you can run in a stereo operation. These are 215 watts per channel at 4 ohms, 120 watts per channel at 8 ohms, and 50 watts per channel at 16 ohms. The Loadbox is extremely powerful as it's able to take up to 200 watts RMS, which equates to about 100 watt amps running at full volume. Since it's able to take the load from your amp and then reamp it through the power amps, you can use this to make loud amps quiet or to make quiet amps loud. You can comfortably push up the master volume on a 100 watt amp and then have it come through your cabinet at bedroom levels, or you can take a 1 watt amp up to gigging volume. Of course, pushing your amp to the absolute limit can cause problems outside of the attenuator and with the actual amp itself, so do this at your own risk. Let's quickly go over the controls of this unit. Each channel has a cabinet output level as well as a DI output level, and they both have dedicated depth and presence controls. The Mojo button just adds a little bit of magic when you're playing at low volumes, helping to simulate the feel of a high volume cab. The amp in level just sets the right input from your amplifier. You'll want to adjust this one just so that it comes up flashing into the OK territory. Being a little bit past this isn't a problem, but it's better to be safe. On the back of the unit, we have a 1/4 inch line input as well as XLR outputs for each of the two channels. The amp input on the back has a variable impedance selector, which is very useful, and has also got the two stereo cab outputs. The effects loop section of the Reload 2 is incredibly powerful, and I'm not going to do a full comprehensive cover of this one now because this could be a whole video in and of itself. A couple of the important things to note are that you can use line level gear like rack gear or instrument level gear like guitar pedals. It allows for stereo effects from a single amp, you can run mono effects across two different sources, and it also opens up the opportunity for things like wet dry wet rigs. That feature is actually pretty huge for me as it means that I can just leave my pedal board hooked up to the Reload 2 and not have to worry about the effects loop in my amps. It also means that the power amp section of the amp is before all of my effects pedals, so they're a little bit cleaner sounding. For the first clip, this is just going to be the main way I run a Loadbox in my personal setup. This is going to be running straight out from my amplifier into the Reload 2, then into my DAW where I'm loading up ML Sound Labs Miko 2 cabinet simulator. The amp's speaker output is going to the amp input of the Reload 2, and I have the impedance set correctly. I've got the channel A input set to amp for this. I could also add pedals into this one by using the effects loop of the unit, but I'll save that for some of the future clips. One important thing I would like to note is that there's pretty much no noise going on here at all. With convoluted setups like this, you can quickly introduce noise, but this is sounding super clean even without a noise gate. Let's hear what this sounds like. This is on the 5153's red channel. The second setup I could see myself using the Reload 2 for is taking a direct feed from the Reload 2 as well as miking up a real cabinet. I find this to be quite a good fail-safe rig, so if I'm recording something through the real cab, should anything go wrong with the mic position or anything like that, I've always got the DI output of the amp to fall back on. The Reload 2 doesn't take a clean tap out like the Captor 8 would, for instance. Instead, it runs the amp through the solid-state power amp. For this, I'm running the cab out A into my Zilla 4x12, which is loaded up with the V30 and the creamback speakers. Since we're in mono, we can disregard the channel B controls and just stick to channel A. I'm going to change up the tone a little bit and go through the blue channel instead. We'll start by hearing the direct signal again running through the Miko 2 plugin, and then I'll switch over to the real cab. Let's now hear what the real cabinet sounds like. This setup is probably the easiest way for me to show you what the depth and presence do, so let's dial that in as well. Let's just quickly hear that dialed in now. The final 5153 rig that I have for this is a bit of a jerry-rigged mess of cables, but it should work out just great. I'm running stereo effects through the effects loop of the Reload 2. I'm then running out to both sides of my cabinet so that I can record the effects in stereo, and I'm running stereo out from the Reload 2 into my interface. Since the Reload 2 is a stereo power amp, this is all able to be done with a single amp as the main hub for this. The speakers in my cab are in an X pattern, so it doesn't give me the full stereo spread in the room, but it should record quite nicely. Again, I'll show both clips back to back. They are being recorded simultaneously, but I can only show one at a time. First, we'll hear the mic'd up sound of these speakers. This is running the Ganymede from the HX1 in the stereo effects loop. Now we'll hear it again, but through the Miko 2 plugin instead, taking the feed from the direct signal of the Reload 2. Even in the room, that sounds incredible. I'm not getting the full stereo spread as I sort of expected, but there is a big difference between the two speakers, so it does give me a good separation. I've switched my Schecter Nick Johnston for my next tone, which means we are going to get super crystal clean. Now we can actually ignore the fact that the Reload 2 is a Loadbox and just use it as a stereo power amp. This was actually another big reason why I bought it. My hopes were to consolidate down from the Sur-reactive load and the orange pedal baby and get a sort of all-in-one rig instead, reducing my points of failure. I'm running the stereo output of my Fractal FM3 with a patch I've set up with the cabinet disabled into the line inputs of the Reload 2. I've switched both of the channels on the amplifier over to line, so it's taking both the left and right line signals. I'm not going to show both the recorded clips for this as I've done a million videos with the Fractal FM3, but I will show you the mic'd up cab tone. This is the CA3 clean model with a stereo mind guide delay and the Cirro Cumulus reverb. on to the conclusion, and the first thing I need to mention is that this video is sponsored as Tunos have provided me a partial discount on this unit in exchange for this demo. I should mention though, I reached out to them as soon as this product was announced because I was so excited about it and I was hoping to just get a loaner unit. I was extremely excited about the concept as it seemed to fit my needs perfectly, and instead I just opted to buy one. Let's start with a couple of cons though, because I feel like it's good to get them out of the way in the conclusion section so that we don't end on a low note. The first thing is, I wish that there was a way to link the two channels. Stuff like the volume, the depth, and the presence would be especially useful to link if you were running two of the same cabinet, for instance. It's extremely rare that you would want them to be set to two different volumes. The price is a big point of contention that I've seen a lot of people aren't too happy about. It's £900 here in the UK, which is about €1,000 or $1,100. If you wanted to buy a decent stereo power amp as well as the sort of industry standard load boxes, you'd be looking around this price, if not more anyway. For example, getting the Surreactive Load and the Seymour Duncan Power Stage Stereo would run you up to £938. I think this is a really good price for what you get in the unit, but I do think they've kind of opened the door for a cheaper mono version of this in the future. They don't tell me anything about that, by the way, so that is just pure speculation. Now, while it does have stereo outputs, the amp input is mono, so if you wanted to run 2 amps into this one, you would need to get a second load box. Side note, I did actually consider doing that for a sort of god rig for this video, running something like the Engel Powerball into the Surreactive Load, then into the line input of the Reload 2, with the EVH 5153 running into the amp input, but that gets complicated. I personally don't see stuff like the omission of IR loading and noise gate and other digital effects like that into this one as a negative, but I do know a lot of people are pretty upset about that. I like how this is set up though. This is a no-nonsense, straightforward analog rig that pretty much anyone can plug into and figure out in seconds. There's no menus, no screen, no setup or anything like that. It is literally just plug it in and go. On to the pros now, and I think the absolute headline feature is going to be its versatility, which I've hopefully demonstrated throughout this video. You're able to run it as a load box, you can run it as a mono power amp, a stereo power amp, you can run out to 2 different DI signals, you can run out to 2 stereo cabinets, you can do a wet dry wet rig. There is so much that you are able to do with this one. I really like that everything you would need to access is on the front face of the unit as well. I've said this with the Engel Powerball 2 as well. I just really like when stuff is easy to access. Once I've got it configured for my setup and in my rack, I probably won't have to touch it again. I think the brand new Celestion designed impedance curve for this one sounds an awful lot better than the Captor 8 and is probably on par with the Surreactive Load. I'd love to do a shootout between those two in the future, so let me know if that's something you would be interested in. I didn't mind the Captor 8 by any means, but this is certainly a step up. Overall, the Reload 2 has an awful lot to love. While it may be overkill for some users, other users will find it to have everything they've been asking for. It has so many features that you're just unable to find elsewhere, and the culmination of all of those features make this something truly unique. So that is everything that I have for this video. Thank you ever so much for sticking around to the end, and I hope you enjoyed it. I will leave my Thomann affiliate link in the description box down below for the Reload 2 if you would like to pick one of these up for yourself. I'm very excited to have this one as part of my rig going forward now, and I'm sure you're going to be seeing it in a lot of future demos. I want to give another big thank you to Tunos for sponsoring this video. That's all for this one though, so until next time, I've been Kai.